Happy Wednesday, guys. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast.
Dan, how about them Bills? Robin too, huh?
I know.
I'm flying the colors here.
I know. I don't know why I don't have any gear. My bad.
Dan's internet's lagging, but it sets up another classic.
Oh, we lost you.
I was going to say it sets up another classic Mahomey v. Bills matchup. This time it's in Buffalo, so you got to give the edge to Buffalo. But it's quite the rivalry they got with Josh Allen.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Robin.
No, I just can't wait for poor Patrick Mahomes to go down, buddy, down. He doesn't know what it's like to play at Highmark Stadium. He doesn't.
He doesn't know what it's like to play away from Arrowhead in the playoffs. This will be his 13th playoff game, or he's had 13 already, and he's never, other than the neutral Super Bowl sites, he's never played a playoff game at an away location. This will be his first time. Now people are going to groan here, but we can't mention the Chiefs coming to Buffalo without mentioning Kelsey and without mentioning Taylor Swift. My daughter, every time Kelsey's in a TV commercial, she looks at him and she goes, "Is that the guy that's dating Taylor Swift?" she has no idea who he is.
That's going to be my next question. Does Taylor Swift travel to Buffalo?
It's believed she will.
In playoffs, she best be.
Yeah, it's believed she will. Which will, let's face it, she adds an element of fun. Even when if you're going to complain about it, it adds an element of fun.
I agree. No hate on my end. So lots to talk about. We had a city council meeting last night that I know we want to recap, and a few other political things we wanted to update people on, and also some exciting business news, which I'm really pumped about. But I think we should start with our city council recap, which I apparently am really excited about with my exclamation point.
It was pretty mild to get too excited about.
No, I know. I meant the little banner that I threw up. I don't know why.
Oh, sorry. I missed that. Okay. Very good, Robin.
So I went to the meeting last night, and I know you guys watched. There were probably maybe 10 people in public comment, if maybe 8 or 10. I thought it was interesting because it was the first council meeting with this administration that Saratoga BLM had specifically put out a call to action on their social media pages to get people to the council meeting as they wanted to comment on the new rules for public comment that were being voted on last night. But by my observation, there were only about 3 people there from Saratoga BLM, so they didn't have a huge turnout, but they did comment. And as there were also some other very interesting comments regarding the public comment rules. I think Saratoga BLM's concerns would best be summed up as the language about reacting with clapping or snapping or, just the reactions in general being kind of not allowed in the rules. To them was kind of penalizing people for having an emotional reaction to something, which I think there's some validity to. I think it's a valid point. I don't think that they were going to be enforcing those rules, to the letter of the law, but I could kind of understand their point.
You were there in person, correct? Because you were one of the speakers, right? You spoke. Very, very well done, by the way. And Michelle Madigan was one of the, even though she's the county supervisor, she can still speak. And she's spoken at the public comment portion regarding the on-call pay. But I got to ask you, Robin, because you were there and I'm watching on a tiny phone screen. There was one that was, I don't want to say bizarre, but, like a poetry, and she had something on and she was speaking in biblical terms. Can you expand on that? Because I only had so much on the phone.
I can. So there were a couple interesting comments. One in particular was from a woman who showed up in almost what looks like a little Red Riding Hood outfit. She was wearing a red cape with a red hood on and then a mask, so you really couldn't see her face. And I was kind of looking at her like, all right, what's going to go on here? Well, what she was doing was, in my opinion, a pretty janky impression of The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Handmaid's Tale.
I have not.
Okay, well, basically it's about this like fascist government run by all men and women are completely subservient, blah, 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 blah. So she was dressed up as a handmaiden and she went to the microphone and was like, my lords, and kept like bowing down while talking about the public comment rules and, if she may be allowed to speak or if she may be allowed to have a thought. And she was parroting Handmaid's Tale to make her point about the public comment rules. I don't think it quite landed for most people. So, A for effort.
I don't mean to laugh at her. She had
no. I mean, it was comical.
Artistic way, but yeah, it went right over my head.
Yeah. Yes, she was sitting with the Saratoga BLM folks who also found it quite comical. There was also another comment right off the bat. The first comment was from a husband of a former employee who spoke about his wife being let go without cause. I guess maybe last week, from a pretty high level position at the city. So that caught me off guard a little bit. Did you guys hear that one?
I missed the first 10 minutes. And if you recall, I was kicking myself because I missed that. So I didn't see it. I'll watch it on the tape, of course, which should be up as soon as this afternoon, I guess. Adam, I think you saw it, right?
Uh-oh, is Adam frozen?
Yeah, I guess he's frozen.
Okay, do you want to text him that he's frozen?
Well,
sorry, guys, my computer was on the wrong network, but I think I'm good now.
Yeah, I thought maybe you were lost in thought, but I'm glad you're back.
Let it be known, Dan went 6 minutes without any technical flubs so far. I want that known. Noted.
So Adam, I was just talking about that first public comment, which was made by the husband of a former employee of the city. Did you catch that one?
Yeah. And, my thoughts, the first thing is that kind of reeked of is, if you remember, the last administration kind of came in and just started making really large, impactful personnel changes about moving positions around and firing people. And just, if you remember, they got rid of the city attorneys. I mean, some really, again, meaningful, deep, impactful personnel moves. So at the surface, that's what this initially struck me with. If this lady was let go, from the sounds of it, on day one of Safford's mayoral tenure. So that's what bothered me was, again, that when you go into an organization, at least take the time to get to know people, get to know your staff, get to know their abilities and their weaknesses and their flaws, and then make personnel decisions. Don't just go in a position that you've never done before and make decisions based that you have a deep knowledge of this position. With that being said, I think there's a little more to the story. Is that correct?
Well, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment. I would say, so this was someone who was in the planning department. And, I mean, perhaps the mayor, took office, went to talk to the people in his department and, heard that this person wasn't up for the job. I'm totally speculating on that, as opposed to just making like a rash decision. But again, that's speculation. I do not know why she was let go. I do know who this person is. I don't know if her name was disclosed last night, so I don't know if I feel totally comfortable naming her in this situation.
Well, her husband, when he spoke, named himself.
Okay. So in general terms, this was someone who was Mayor Kim's executive assistant, and then applied for and was hired for the position of, I believe it's called Director of Sustainability. It's actually a huge job. And it was a job that was previously held by Tina Carton, who worked at the city for years and years and is very, well known. She did an incredible job. A lot of this has to do with securing grant money and then managing the projects that the grant money is for, whether it's for anything having to do with climate, environment, or, like the Missing Link Sidewalk project. Anything that's really grant related and sustainability related is managed by this individual. And my recollection of when this hire was made was that there was some controversy attached in that I believe on Saratoga Springs Politics, there was a piece that showed the various applications for the position. And in John Kaufman's opinion, his analysis was that there were other people that were far more qualified than this individual, and that this was a bit of a kind of patronage hire. But again, that was his opinion. I'm not making judgments, but that was kind of the background as far as I know.
he did note that the qualifications were changed, apparently in favor of this person's then qualification. In other words, she was not qualified by the then qualifications, according to Kaufman, and then they dialed them back somewhat, and then she put in an application that they deemed that she was qualified. It's a good post. When was that post? Do you know, Robin? If someone wanted to look at it.
I could look it up. I could look it up.
Yeah, I have it as well.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's been. I've been in the job market lately, and one thing I will say about kind of defending hiring from within and the people is that in the corporate world, it's an extremely common practice.
Totally.
Of pulling people up again, at the surface, if you have somebody who's not quite as qualified as the other candidates, but who's worked for you, who you have a good working relationship with, who knows the corporate environment and the corporate culture that you operate in and is a good fit, there's a lot to be said for that. So, my takeaway, this wasn't a wholesale get rid of risk and safety, and we're going to get sued for, it's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future. I don't think it's that big, but I think it's something to keep an eye on, because again, making these personnel decisions on day one, my business background tells me it's not always unless you have some, like Robin and like you said, unless you had some real good intel that this person is just horrendous at their position, which again, we don't know. We don't know at
all. In fact, I do know this person personally, and I think she's delightful. And I do think it was just kind of a bummer all around to have to have a husband come in to discuss his wife's, firing. It was just uncomfortable. And I hope there's other avenues he or she can pursue if they need to, resolve whatever may need to be resolved.
Yeah. With that being said, and I don't know really any of the players here, so I can be a little more cold, but if you have a job higher in government and that job you serve at the pleasure of somebody, whether it be the mayor or somebody else, you serve at the pleasure. That is one of the pitfalls of taking a job like that, is that there are no civil service protections and so forth. And I don't know the details of this job. I don't know what the nature of it was, but it sounds like this person served at the pleasure, and that's the way it works. And Adam, to your point that you wish the mayor would have gone in and given it a few weeks, that's a valid point. I get that, but in the end, it sounds like it was his authority to make the decision, and apparently he did.
Yeah.
We have a helpful comment from a reader, by the way, who's letting us know that it was the August 23rd, 2023 blog on Saratoga Springs Politics that had the details of when John Kaufman wrote about this. So thank you, Dina. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Dina had also mentioned earlier that our masks allowed in City Hall, that could be dangerous. This mask, I guess, could be construed as kind of a COVID type of mask. So that's kind of, I think it is kind of strange for someone to completely obscure their face. I do think that's not great, but I think this could have probably been passed off as a COVID mask and just a red hood.
Were you unnerved by it at all, Robin, or did you just sort of shrug?
Listen, I've seen some, excuse my language, but I've seen some crazy shit at public comment, some crazy shit from people. One time, God love her, there was a woman who dressed up in the middle of January in literally like a full bathing suit outfit with like, a snorkel and like a floaty and came in like in full bathing attire to make the point that it was basically flooding outside. And she hoped we all brought our bathing suits because that was the only way we were going to be able to get home was to swim. So we've seen some outfits. It was a little bit like, what's going to happen? But I wasn't concerned for safety, really.
Hey, I know you guys touched on it before, but can we switch gears here and talk about the public comment rules?
Yes, so that's what I wanted to talk about next. Yeah.
All right. I didn't know if we just had skipped over that, but
no.
There were some getting one thing I think that was showed in the last election is that Saratoga does not want their city business disrupted week in and week out by protesters and disruptions to the city council. And part of the problem, and they talked about this last night, was Mayor Kim really his rules that there were no rules kind of didn't work, right? Because if the rules that there are no rules leaves, and people just go in and do whatever they want. And at times they did, and twice city council meetings had to be shut down. So Mayor Stafford proposed some rules, and some of them. This was proposed 2 weeks ago at the previous city council meeting. He got public input and he made changes. For instance, one of the rules, I believe, was you had to sign in and put your name and address, which, again, I think that's a good rule. I don't have an issue with that. People did. So now he even made a point to say you don't have to say your name at public comment, which is again, you're kind of inviting people to, if you live in this city, or not even in the city, but if you want to make a public comment, you should have to say your name. And this is not stifling somebody's right to free speech to ask them to state their name and where they live. And at least they can give general terms. But there were, there are other rules, and there was some debate about some of the rules. And I'm just curious what you guys thought about this.
Sorry, go ahead if you want, Dan. I, of course, have many thoughts.
Okay. Well, first of all, I like Commissioner Jason Golub's answer to this. He said, I don't necessarily like these rules, but I like the fact that there are rules. And I'm going to vote for this because we need rules. And that was, he's so damn reasonable all the time, which is why we can't have him on the show anymore, because, we need to up our ratings with some bomb throwers, some accusations, and he doesn't play that game. But it was just very logical what he said, and it made sense. And I credit him for voting for the concept of rules, even if he didn't like the specific rules.
Yeah, I think the example that you're talking about in particular was that attached to these proposed rules was that the public comment period would be for 30 minutes. And Commissioner Songvi made the point that she thought 30 minutes was just too short because people are allowed to speak for 3 minutes. So technically, that's only 10 people who are allowed to speak at public comment, and then you're just cutting everybody else off. And I agreed with her that I think that's too short of a limit for public comment. As we've seen over the last 2-3 years, there are oftentimes more than 10 people who want to comment. And I do think that, you should really be able to get through the majority of public comments and not cut people off. So, but then Commissioner Golub was making the point, which again, I was like, oh, wait, I agree with this as well. If you don't have a cutoff time, then it's up to the mayor to just kind of arbitrarily cut it off and be like, okay,
or not cut it off. Sorry.
Or not cut it off. And so, so you could be like, oh, we're going to stop after the 13th person because maybe in the mayor's mind, they don't want the 14th person to stop. So, they can kind of abuse that. And so, Commissioner Golub's point was that both Commissioner Songvi especially acknowledged that Mayor Kim did not enforce the rules consistently over the last 2 years, which is what caused so many problems. And so Commissioner Golub's point was having a set time, will help with that consistency as opposed to leaving it up to the mayor to end public comment if it's going too long.
Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting because they just kind of a rhetorical reaction. You see, they wanted to keep blaming Commissioner Montanino for the problems that City Hall and the meetings being shut down for his actions. But they did. But it was something telling that Commissioner Golub did mention that Mayor Kim's rules of no rules did, he kind of let it slip that a lot of the disruptions and the problems during public comment were Mayor Kim not enforcing any rules. And I agree with that. I think that was a problem. The problem I have with people who are objecting to these rules were that, you know what? The mayor is not, everything doesn't have to be etched in perfect stone. The mayor is tasked with running those meetings. He has the right to use some discretion. Mayoral discretion doesn't necessarily mean discrimination or racism or anti-Semitism, or he doesn't want to hear what you hear. And sometimes if it slips into that, that's what elections are for. But this idea of don't let, good be the enemy of great. The fact that we can't have a certain rule for every certain circumstance, like the lady wearing a mask and do we have to have a whole set of rules now, or what masks are allowed and what masks are not allowed? Or I agree, you shouldn't be able to come with your face obscured to City Hall because that is a potential security risk. Now, if it's a COVID mask, it's one thing. But if you have a COVID mask and a hoodie, so all you're showing is your eyes, then I would make the argument, and I think it's reasonable, and a reasonable person would think you're purposely masking your identity and for what reason? That's a safety hazard. So I think the commissioners who voted against or have issues with this got so caught up in the granule. We have to make sure every dot is, the mayor can't have any discretion, because any discretion by the mayor may mean he's being discriminatory against a certain group. I think it's just it's silly, it's nonsensical. It's not what these meetings are. We have a mayor. We have voted a mayor. We trust our mayor's discretion, and if he uses his discretion in a way that's blatantly discriminatory, we have a justice system for that, and we also have a system called democracy, where he would be voted, kind of like Kim was voted out because people didn't like the way he was running the meeting. So that was my issue. I have no problem with the mayor having rules. I have no problem with these rules having some interpretation by the mayor, and let's continue with the city business.
I will say one of the things that I think is not helpful, because I understand that some people feel uncomfortable saying their name and address, but I do think it's important to indicate if you live in Saratoga Springs, because as a former city council member, when people are speaking during public comment, I absolutely think that you should be able to hear from everyone, whether they live in the city or not. However, when people are talking about an issue, I'm going to give a little more, weight to the people who are residents complaining about an issue versus people who don't live here complaining about an issue. It all matters. It would all matter to me, but the resident complaints, should be a bit of a should be a bit of a priority, because they're the people who actually live and reside here, and are paying taxes and whatnot. And so I do think everyone should be able to public comment wherever they live. But do you know what I mean? Because to me, that's the downside of not knowing where people are from when they're commenting.
You know what? I agree with you, Rob. I agree with 100% is that the people we should know if they're a resident or not. Another interesting thing, and Commissioner Moran keeps coming back to this, and I just don't get this, and I don't think anybody else is buying this. Is as far as a sergeant at arms escorting people out and he says, well, the second that police officer, the sergeant at arms, their career is ruined. Hands on. Exactly. Like, they're and Commissioner Cole, who was in law enforcement, essentially said their career wouldn't be. And I agree. I just don't see how a police officer.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, right. But Commissioner Moran's running with that ball, and he keeps saying this is going to ruin a police officer's career. And where I'm going, what made me think of that is was anybody else surprised last night that 3 minutes wasn't tested? It seemed like it was going to be tested, but it never really was tested. And I'm surprised.
I thought so too. I even texted you guys to that fact. I said, I bet you this one goes over, and that person didn't.
It was really, really helpful. And I articulated this to her afterwards. So the deputy mayor, Joanne Kiernan, was literally standing next to the mayor holding a digital clock with a 3-minute countdown on it, like a big one. So you could see the time counting down. And so it didn't come as a surprise when it was up. And I know it sounds stupid, but something that simple is actually very helpful. And it weirdly, I think, helps people not go over that limit, because it's not just the mayor objecting and saying, you're done, and trying to cut you off. You're literally seeing the clock run out and the alarm go off. And so I know that Deputy Kiernan probably felt a little bit awkward, like standing there, like holding this digital clock, but it was really helpful.
Yeah.
And
at least it wasn't Tony this time.
Poor Tony. He's finally been relieved of his duty of like wiping off the microphone with the Kleenex.
Wiping off the mic. I remember that.
Yeah, which the city attorney, my God, is in charge of wiping off the freaking microphone. But
that's a good company man right there.
I know. There were no issues last night, which I think was great. But I also think that Mayor Safford has a real talent of making people feel heard. He's really listening and acknowledging what they're saying,
and genuinely credits them, even when they're against his point. He said that was really well stated, and he
kills them with kindness. Yeah, he does have an aura. Yeah. Right. There are a couple of times where I was thinking, I just tell him to go fuck themselves. Pardon me.
Well, and then also,
but he's like, that was really well done, and it is true that some of these, like Diogenes there, who got up and did this whole
it was kind of hysterical
swearing, is that. Hey, I don't agree with pretty much 98% of what she said, but the fact of the matter is, she definitely put some work into it, and it was well. It was, when she, I don't know. I don't know if AI writes this stuff for her or what, or she's just
I think
really
she writes
talented.
The man.
She's very talented at writing. I mean, again, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So I don't agree with what the writing is, but Mayor Safford, instead of saying this you can't say this or stop swearing. He complimented her on what she did, and it just disarms everybody in the negativity and the hostility and the anger. Just completely disarming. He's done a great job with that.
Wait, I just want to tell people what her public comment was, because I actually thought it was very entertaining, very well kind of researched and written. And this was a person who identifies themselves as Diogenes, living on stolen land. She's a frequent flyer at city council meetings. And what she read last night was basically a public comment that pointed out that in some cultures or in some periods of time, certain words were considered profanity that wouldn't be considered profane now, or vice versa. And she was giving examples of those words in that language. And I mean, I think Mayor Safford had a bit of a chuckle, like a look on his face of like, because it was entertaining, and there was a valid point there. You know what I mean?
Well researched, by the way.
Yes.
Lenny Bruce, George Carlin.
Totally.
Give some credit where credit's due.
Totally. So, but yeah, but again, instead of being confrontational or angry, you could tell he was listening. He was amused. He gave her props for the comment, even though she was, cursing while she was commenting. But I think her point was well taken. And then I think the only other comments last night that we had were primarily about the on-call pay situation that we talked about last week.
Wait, before we go there, Robin, let's bring this home and say what happened. I'd like to say what happened with this. Commissioner Sungvi made what she called, and I hear it a lot at the table, a friendly amendment. In the law, I'm sure in the city charter and Robert's rules, there's either an amendment or there's not an amendment. A friendly amendment is a term of art, I guess I would say. But I didn't view it as a friendly amendment because she wanted to completely erase the 30-minute time limit. And I'm not saying it was hostile or anything, but it was, that took out a major point in the proposed rules, was to have a 30-minute time limit. And she said, I don't want one. And I think it was Commissioner Moran that offered her some language to up it. And she just at one point held her ground, and I think it failed. The amendment was seconded and it failed. And they said, do you want to redo the one? Do you want to resubmit your amendment with, a higher time limit? She just said, no, I don't. She was pretty firm about that. Some might say stubborn, but so it did pass as proposed, right? There were no amendments. It did pass as ultimately proposed last evening.
Correct. So she had offered a friendly amendment to get rid of the 30-minute limit on public comment. That failed as a friendly amendment. And then there was a suggestion of her amending that to make it a 60-minute public comment period. She had no interest in doing that. And then Commissioner Moran did point out that it was the executive in charge of the meeting, AKA the mayor. It was under the mayor's discretion to, extend that public comment period if they wanted to in the moment. Long story short, there was, a significant discussion. They voted on the public comment rules as proposed in the agenda, and it passed 4-1, Commissioner Songvi being the dissenting vote. And I just want to, throw up one comment, guys. Dina, again, just said she's a published author with many books available on Amazon. If that's about Diogenes, is that about Diogenes, Dina? Because that would be fascinating to me. I would like to see what she's written.
Interesting, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, the public comment rules passed. I think it's a good thing. And again, I think we've already articulated this, but, I think as long as they're applied consistently, hopefully things will continue to go well. And I, again, still couldn't understand that comment, though, about making one of the police officers a sergeant at arms and why that would be detrimental for the police officer. But
our chief of police, who recently got promoted, was a defendant in the Darrell Mount lawsuit, the most racially charged lawsuit this city's ever seen. And, he obviously the city was acquitted in that and found not liable. But that could have ruined his career, and it didn't. He was promoted to chief. So I don't understand Commissioner Moran's theory there.
Yeah.
As it relates to having to do some order at the city council meetings.
And Commissioner Cole also pointed out that all these rules they had run by the Committee on Open Government for New York State to kind of, get approval on the rules and make sure they were kind of kosher, so to speak. So anyhow, voted, it was passed. I think that's a good thing. And what else was there
But your earlier point, those will be challenged. We suspect, right? I think do all three of us agree at some point, either inadvertently or purposely, there's going to be.
I think so, but the other, it's like the last night's meeting just kind of had a kumbaya feel to it, didn't it? Like you know, like they shot a now
hour and 38 minutes. That's how long it took.
It's one incident, and yes, I think you're right, Dan. But I think barring an incident, I think I don't know. I maybe I'm just being too optimistic here, but the city got in, did their business yesterday, heard from the constituents, and got some things done and went home. One thing, shifting gears a little bit. I know we want to talk about a number of things, but did you catch Commissioner Golub talking about the sci-fi project?
I did, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I know you and I have both wanted an update, right?
Yeah, and I was a little, so just so that people know, sci-fi was an initiative I believe started by Commissioner Madigan when she was a commissioner of finance. And essentially what happened is a company offered to come in and say, listen, we're going to put the latest and greatest cable in the ground in Saratoga, and we're going to run a connection to every house.
Broadband.
And what's that?
Sorry, broadband internet.
Broadband, exactly. And all essentially, this is not going to cost the city or the homeowner a penny. All this is going to do is now allow the homeowner the option to essentially move away from Spectrum and get another third-party internet provider, which I think everybody here loves. That competition, it helps service, it helps reliability, it helps prices. We were really looking forward to that. It was supposed to start last summer and then just kind of died. But right, Robin, this is what Commissioner Golub was essentially saying about the sci-fi project.
Yes. So basically, what happened was that the manner in which this broadband cable was going to go in was that they were going to do micro trenching, which would be like, I think like trenches like this wide, where they would sink the cable on the sides of city streets. So they did an initial test last winter or the winter before, I think it was last winter, of the micro trenching to see if it would hold up under a Saratoga Springs winter. It did not. And so they had to come up with a new plan in terms of how they would install this broadband cable. And then also there was a bit of a pause because this is a privately held company that's doing this. And I guess they had some funding issues or something. So that kind of like delayed things a little bit. It sounds like the funding issues have been cleared up. They're not with the city, by the way. They're with the private company and their equity issues. Those issues have been cleared up. And I guess they've come up with a new methodology for the cable that my understanding was DPW has signed off on. And so we are once again, hopefully moving forward. And thank God, because you guys, the internet situation here blows. Like, let's be honest, like Spectrum is wicked expensive. And as we know from Dan's experience, very unreliable. And we do need competition. And Vios is not coming up here. I mean, we've gone through this. I've gone through this extensively with other people. We desperately need another option. I think this is the option. And I think it is going to come at a, fairly dramatically discounted price once it's installed. I would also just love to see a free city Wi-Fi, that could be done. And I think that would also be awesome. So I hope this continues to move forward and is successful.
Thank you guys, because I was there for part of it, but for whatever reason I couldn't tune in. So I'm
sure and again, I mean, if you have good, reliable Wi-Fi, as far as there's so many more. Our cable bill is astronomical right now for watching like 2 channels, right? but I don't want to get away with it because I don't want to just be completely reliant on the internet to watch television. So if you again have this competition, have reliable internet coming into your home, it just opens up a lot of doors and it saves a lot of dollars. So let's hope that gets moving again.
Yeah, I totally agree. A couple other things that I will get details on for our next podcast, because I think they're really important. I think they're overlooked sometimes by people. The mayor made a number of appointments to the land use boards. The land use boards here have a tremendous amount of power in terms of what projects get approved, what don't, and the speed at which they're able to, get built, how they look, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they hold a ton of power. And the appointments to these land use boards are for 7 years. So they're significant and they're at the pleasure of the mayor. The mayor has that responsibility to appoint people to these boards. And last night he made an appointment to two appointments to the planning board and one to the zoning board of appeals. So I will get more info about that for next week, so I can tell you who exactly he appointed, because I can only recall one person off the top of my head. So
you know what I will say about his appointments, though, and this is what I was happy to hear, and we haven't seen that, and some of our members is that the appointments, when he was discussing their credentials for the appointments, they were engineers, they were in the construction business, they were people with, they weren't Skidmore professors per se, there were people with intimate knowledge of land use and how this goes. It wasn't, it wasn't nepotism. It wasn't, all right, somebody helped on my campaign, or somebody's, active in my political party and I'm going to put them on a board, at least from their descriptions. Now, I didn't go into each person's individual donations to see exactly where their politics lie, but they certainly had the degrees. There was an engineer there. There was somebody who you want on a land use board, because they understand how, land can be used and how buildings can be built on that land. And so I was happy to hear that.
Yeah. Because
Chuck Marshall being one of the choices, and I personally think it was a great choice.
That was the only person I remembered. No, that was the only person I remembered as well, was Chuck Marshall. But I know he can be a bit controversial to some people because of his position on development. But everybody's going to be a little controversial. Nobody's going to be, an appointment with absolutely no dissent or criticism. But
he's knowledgeable. He's qualified. Yeah, he's clearly qualified.
But I just want to make it clear to people, one of the major criticisms that I have of these boards, and I think is what your guys are getting at, there are no prerequisites or qualifications to be appointed to these boards. You can appoint someone who doesn't know a damn thing about our zoning or planning or, how the city has developed, who doesn't know anything. Who only knows about rainbows and butterflies, and you can appoint them. And for 7 years, they carry a tremendous amount of power, and they can block businesses from coming here. They can block people from doing things from their home. I mean, they can really screw people up financially and otherwise. And so I think, I wish someone would take on our land use boards in terms of making these appointments, just putting some requirements or stipulations in place so that we get people who do have some knowledge and aren't politically motivated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope these. Well, that was a tangent. I'll skip it. We're gonna move over to Van Dam.
Yes. So an update on Van Dam. Adam, you can probably speak to this the best because you were involved a bit. Do you want to give people kind of a recap of what happened?
Yeah, sure. So, Van Dam Street has had a truck traffic increase throughout the years. My sister recently moved to a house on Van Dam Street. We own some property there, so I'm pretty. I spend a lot of time over there, and it's gotten so bad where the intersection of where Van Dam goes down and reaches kind of Broadway and 50 can be backed up for 2 blocks. And it just became a mess. And the amount of truck traffic, and essentially what was happening was Van Dam Street was being used as a shortcut for trucks, coming from, and now I know there's more to this, but essentially coming west to east and then heading south. So that if they're coming from, Western New York, instead of going to Albany and hopping south, they kind of cut that. I mean, a lot of people know what I'm talking about. Cut that corner and come through Saratoga, and there's health hazards involved with this. With all the exhaust, these diesel trucks are coming out. There's safety issues. There's noise issues. So the Van Dam Neighborhood Association got together and petitioned the last administration to put a 5-ton weight limit on Van Dam, and not so essentially telling those trucks you got to go somewhere else. Like everything there was some controversy with it, but the Mayor Kim and the city council ultimately voted to put up 5-ton signs. And then about a couple of weeks later, the DOT chimed in and sent a letter saying, and I don't have the letter in front of me, so my verbiage is perfect. But this is a state designated alternate truck route, whatever that means. So essentially, the city does not have the authority to come up and put up these 5-ton signs. Now, real quick, I'll just give my 2 cents with all this. Do
you want me to just read the last sentence here from the letter?
Yes. Yeah. Great.
So it says, "We do not believe the city's 5-ton weight limit may supersede the federal regulations and respectfully request weight limit signs be removed from the section of Van Dam Street designated as an access highway." So they're asking that those signs be removed ASAP.
Right. And my understanding is that they probably are going to be removed. We can come up with a better thing. But this is my 2 cents.
I think they're already gone. I think
they may already be removed. But my 2 cents on this is Saratoga is being used as a shortcut. This isn't, local deliveries, local trucks have the right to go, even with those 5-ton signs out. My understanding, they could come through. It's like a war of attrition. We got to fight them everywhere we can to get these trucks. We have a robust interstate system. I have no problem with the previous administration doing this. I know some people did. I think this was a good move on their part. We have to just keep on blocking them till they go around our city and don't use us as a shortcut and put our residents' health and safety in jeopardy. So I hope that Mayor Safford and the current city council takes this on full force and with the help of Kerry Warner, gets these trucks out of our city. So that's my 2 cents on it. But I wonder if you guys feel the same, because I know there's some dissent.
It is going to be really, really tough to do that. As you saw, the city council, and I got to go back for a minute. The city council, again, the last city council was like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. They just mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. And they did it here. They acted, and to Commissioner Jason Golub's credit, at the December 5th city council meeting, Commissioner Montanino put this on the table as a motion. It was second. And Commissioner Golub said, can we slow down and do things right here? He was more focused on enforcement, but he had the right concept. He said, why don't we table this to the meeting later in the month? Mayor Kim shot him down. And he was logical there. And they did it. And now they got, and to quote John Kaufman's blog, I'll quote John. He said, this is yet another example of the previous council's obliviousness to the need for rigorous due diligence. In their rush to endear themselves to the homeowners on Van Dam Street and grab headlines, the council did the neighborhood a disservice by spreading false hopes. And I agree with that. And for those of you on Van Dam Street, we're with you. Our hearts are with you. But the city council did it wrong, and that puts you backwards, not forward. They needed to do their due diligence. They didn't. It's just yet another example of this last council really making a mistake, shooting themselves in the foot, then reloading quickly and shooting themselves again.
Commissioner Golub was actually, sorry. Sorry guys, did something pop up on your screen, or is it just mine? Okay, just mine. Commissioner Golub was very sorry. I'm just dealing with a user issue over here. So Commissioner Golub was very kind of passionate in talking about this at that meeting in December. He was like holding the paper and he was like, I will vote for this, but know that it's not worth the piece of paper it's written on, because they didn't take this kind of, in my opinion, the first initial step. Because Adam, I agree with everything you're saying in spirit. Like, I agree. I think that's kind of the only way to deal with this. There's no, there's no road we can build. There's no new truck route we can come up with. I think we just need to do exactly what you said. However, in putting this weight limit on Van Dam, before doing that, I would have thought the first step would have been to contact DOT to make sure there wasn't an issue. So you don't look like assholes, put up signs and have to take them down 3 weeks later. I mean, what was the point of that? All those people came out from the neighborhood to talk about this. It took time and emotion, and et cetera, et cetera. They thought they had a victory. Well, they didn't have a victory at all. They had a whole lot of nothing, And so I think Commissioner Golub's point, should have been taken more seriously by the council, so that we didn't have this just kind of like, total waste of effort and time and energy for something that was just immediately taken down by the DOT.
What I've never seen done by this council, and Robin, maybe you can give insight into it, or maybe you do recall instances of Commissioner Golub that night talked about tabling it, but he didn't make a motion to table. I've never seen a city council member say, you know what, we really need time on this. I am making a motion to table this until the next meeting, and then hopefully they get a second and so forth. But I just don't see that happen. It's like they don't use that. To Commissioner Golub's credit, maybe he didn't want to just force something down their throat, but in that case, it probably made sense.
I think it's always hard in those situations, because when you have a whole neighborhood kind of turn out the way the folks on Van Dam did, it's really impressive. You've got all these people in the audience. They moved this agenda item to the top of the meeting. And so, of course, there's a ton of pressure to, you want to please the people in the room. You want to give them what they want.
Well stated, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Mayor Kim, he was on his way out, so he didn't really have time to table it. So he just, he rushed it through. But hopefully this administration will contact DOT and maybe have some more comprehensive conversations with them about what our challenges are and how we could work together to come up with some solutions. I think that, to me, makes the most kind of logical sense here.
This is a humongous problem that does not have an easy answer. I don't know if it has an answer, much less an easy one.
Well, if the answer is keeping trucks on the interstate, then it does have an easy answer. And this is totally anecdotal, but I can say once those signs were up, there was a marked difference in the flow of trucks on that street. So again, I think if you can keep half the truck, again, none of this is backed by science. This is all anecdotal. But if you can keep those trucks, it's going to be 30 more minutes of their time to stay on our interstate system and not cut through our city. That's an easy answer right there. It's not like there's a plant, in western, west of the city that the trucks are, there's not there's a Target distribution center, I guess, but they can use exit 16. Now that I think about it, the Target distribution center is right there. So there's really the amount of truck traffic there. I can't imagine that where they're coming from is so vital that they use that road that they can't just stay on our highways.
So, Adam, my kind of half joking, half not solution for this, and it's not exactly on Van Dam, but if you just construct a little pedestrian bridge over Church Street going to the hospital and make it just low enough.
Just low, yeah, exactly.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Problem solved. So that's the only solution.
That would get another nasty gram from DOT, by the by.
Oh, hey, I'm on DOT and I are good. We did that Pride crosswalk together. I checked with DOT. We good. We good. In other news, they did approve the purchase of a new ladder truck for the fire department, which I think is a good thing. Pretty expensive, but a good thing nonetheless. Guys, I also just want to throw up one comment because it's super nice. Larry Manning says, everyone viewing should hit the like button. It helps the Saratoga podcast gain visibility and reach a wider audience. True that, Larry. And thank you for pointing that out. We really appreciate you and your adorable
that like.
Yes.
I know.
And that dog is adorable, Larry.
I know. The cutest dog ever. So thank you, Larry. We appreciate it. What else was I going to say? I think that was about it. There was going to be an update on the director of risk and safety position. And I had thought the expectation was that Commissioner Moran, whose department that position is under, was hoping to make an announcement about a hire last night. But my understanding is that he did not last night. So I guess they're still interviewing people, but I really do hope that they get that position filled quickly with the right person, because as we know from what's happened over the last year or two, we need someone managing our risk and safety program like yesterday.
I agree, Robin. Well stated.
Yeah.
We had some economic development news, hospitality. We do.
Yes. So we have I'm thrilled about this business news. Do you want to share, Dan?
Yeah, in this morning's Times Union and probably elsewhere by now, because I copied on Saratoga Report, shameless plug there. The owner of Nove Restaurant out in Wilton, and Robin, tell me the name again. I'm sorry.
Lou?
Yes. Last name. Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot there. The owner, anyway, he apparently has bought or is in the process of buying Sperry's restaurant. And not only is he doing that, he owns the empty lot next door where the fire was, I believe, Thanksgiving several years back. He wants to put a hotel on that very lot. Like, wow, talk about ambitious. God bless him. That's going to be a lot of, speaking of land use boards, that's going to have to go through some boards and so forth. But I love, and if you read the article, it's like it was his love for the city, and I believe, Robin, you know him. It seemed like he truly was like doing this for the reasons that he thought it would be a good thing for Caroline Street.
Oh, well. Robin has a little bit of a different take.
Okay.
At the risk of getting myself into hot water, he has owned that parcel, that burned down for years now, and he had it on the market at an extremely, extremely high price. It did not sell. And I think that's now why he's choosing to develop it. So I don't think it's out of necessarily like, his love for Saratoga and wanting to add something to Caroline Street, because if that were the case, I think he would have taken action on it over the last like 7 years that it's been sitting vacant. So I live 1 block up on Caroline Street, just so people know. So this is like my little hood, and every time I walk that block on Caroline, I get really bummed out because almost more than half the block has been sitting vacant with Sperry's closed. And then that horrible looking vacant lot, with a chain link fence and all this trash inside. It looks awful. And so I'm delighted that he's choosing to develop it. I'm delighted that Sperry's is under contract, just because we need to see businesses built and open. It is not a good look for our city ever downtown to have vacancies, vacant lots, closed restaurants. That is
especially an iconic location like Sperry's.
Yeah. And there's a lot of sketchy activity that happens on Lower Caroline Street, as you guys know, at night. And having an empty lot and closed businesses right in the middle of that sketchiness does not help things. So thank you, Lou, for choosing to do this. I wish you'd done it a little sooner, but I'm happy you're doing it now.
Yeah. So this is I didn't know. I know who you're talking about now, Lou. If he's owned that for a while, big fan of Lou and all his business endeavors. Lou.
I know I'm going to get like killed in the night.
Adam, you know a thing or two about hospitality, your family and so forth. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, if you want my hospitality part, it's a really interesting place to put a hotel, because this is just my hospitality gut reaction. It's going to be loud, right? Yeah. There's nothing you can do. It's going to, and to be loud, it's going to, where in the how in the market are you going to position yourself? So you're not going to be able to position yourself like in a Delphi, at a high end place with super high end prices, because you're going to have on weekend. I mean, Robin, you live closest. I live by Spring Street Deli, and in the summer on Fridays and Saturday nights, when my windows close, I can hear bumping. And I'm a good 3 or 4 blocks away. So having a hotel right there is going to. You're not going to get families, or at least families are going to be happy. You're going to get a very certain, a type of clientele that's here for the party. I'm not against it. I'm just, and I've been to hotels in New York City that essentially, I remember one time my wife and I were checking in a hotel in New York. We did not know this, but it was like, we were checking in and like Snooki was having like a dance party in there. And we had no idea, except when I'm like, holy shit, that was Snooki who just walked by. But all night, and luckily the kids were young enough, and we were in good spirits about it, but it's not the kind of hotel I'd ever stay at again. So the hotel rooms are great as a hotelier. I don't know how it'll work, but again, love to see the property developed.
He proposed it as 50 to 65 rooms. I don't know how. I mean, I know how, but not in this city. I don't know how you get that many rooms in that tight spot.
50 to 65
before we talk about parking.
It's a bigger lot than you. Well, I don't know. It's a.
Well, I mean, if you can, I can tell you the Inn at Saratoga, because obviously I know that hotel in the main building there, which is sizable. There's 38 rooms. So that is 3 stories. And probably, boy, I don't know, a couple 100 yards back. I mean, that's a lot of 60 to 65 rooms is a big, but theoretically, he didn't pull that number out of nowhere, right? You got to imagine he ran some numbers first.
I mean, he's going to build up, obviously, and you can only build to what, 6 stories is the limit, 5 or 6?
I don't know. We got a new ladder truck now. Maybe we go higher.
Across from the library.
I know it's 6 or less. I thought it might be 5, but I know it's 6 stories or less.
Which is interesting, because isn't that restriction based on how high a ladder trucks could go?
No, I think it's actually honestly just for, I think it's for several reasons, but I think it's really just for the general vibe of what Saratoga, the downtown looks like. We don't want any like high rises, so to speak.
Right.
But, I have to say the Grand Pavilion Hotel, my understanding is that those are now basically all condos, right?
I thought they were apartments.
Yeah. So I just find that to be kind of an interesting little comparison, because that's right kind of across from where this is being proposed. And I wonder if that was one of the issues they had with using it as a hotel, if it was noisy. But then I also look at places like the Washington, which is the high-end luxury rental on Broadway that backs up to basically the back of like Gaffney's. And, people rent. It's pretty full pretty much all the time. So maybe there's enough insulation and soundproofing to make it not an issue. But I do wonder what kind of clientele they'd be going after. My guess is it would be like people who are here to gamble and party, and certainly not families.
Yeah.
And Adam,
where would they park? That's my question. Where is there available parking?
Well, we do have a large public parking garage, approximately a block and a half away. So there's that. Also, you have places like the Adelphi that have an off-site parking lot, so they valet everyone to an off-site parking lot.
Yeah, I guess that would have to be, right?
Yeah. Hey, they can park in. I've got 3 parking spots, guys. So I can charge top dollar for that hotel. You can come park over here, VIP parking. And Adam, I did also have the same experience as you. I checked into a hotel once, not realizing they had a nightclub in the basement. It was a goddamn nightmare. But I'm looking forward to seeing these renderings, and just in general, looking forward to seeing an open Sperry's and some kind of development happening on that lot. Yep. I also know at some point the lot on the corner of Caroline and Henry, that's currently a little privately owned parking lot, I believe is also going to be developed at some point. So potentially a lot of changes in store for Lower Caroline Street.
Saratoga was always on the move.
It's always on the move.
All right, you guys, the little city that could, huh?
You got it. You got it. We are coming up on an hour, you guys. Should we move into some cheers and jeers?
Absolutely.
All right. What do we got, folks? What do we got?
I'm just going to repeat what we talked about a little earlier. I'm going to kick it off. You guys usually let me kick these off. Two city council meetings now with the new mayor and the different city council, both about an hour and 40 minutes long, well handled, orderly, get business done, respectful. I commented earlier that will change at some point, at least 1 or 2 meetings. I hope I'm wrong, but if it does, I hope it goes back. I like this. I like this a lot. That's an absolute cheer. And that is my one cheer. And I did not bring a jeer today because I didn't want to.
Good, because I only have a jeer. And my jeer is for the city council, Dan, because it is boring now. It is not the fireworks. It gives us nothing to talk about. We got to kind of fill the hour with some fluffier. I like the drama. I like the heated exchanges. I like the what's going to happen next. And I love the soap opera. And Mayor Safford's taking that away from me. Bring it back. Somebody do something. Let's get crazy again.
God damn it, Adam. Go put on a little Red Riding costume and go to public comment next week.
Adam, I think Saratoga will not disappoint. Just give it time.
I think I have one. I'll go check it out.
I have to, on a personal note, I do so appreciate the efficiency of the meetings because, as you know, we're listening to them. I listen to almost every city council meeting, and it is so nice not to be there or at home on my headphones till like 11 o'clock at night. But my cheer is for the police department because I had the delight of going to their promotional and swearing in ceremony last week, where they were celebrating this promotion of Eric Warfield to assistant chief. I promoted him to his lieutenant position when I was on the city council. It was awesome seeing him promoted to assistant chief. We also had another officer who was promoted to sergeant, and then 11 new hires, 11. And so it was just so great to be there. And you hear about all these folks who have been hired and decided to join our police force. And they come up one at a time, and they have their badge, and their badge gets pinned on them by like a loved one. And sometimes it's a mother or a father or a wife. And it's just like a really touching, wonderful ceremony with like positive vibes only. And it's such a nice thing to attend. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the police department, our new hires. We're so happy to have you, and congratulations to our promotions. And also the mayor spoke at that ceremony, as did Commissioner Cole. And they both were just right on the money, didn't speak too long, said just the right thing. Mayor Safford's message was really like, we believe in you. And it was just, it was well done. And it was emceed by Lieutenant Angela McGovern and, who else? Evan Ford, I want to say. Was it Evan Ford or Andrew? Anyway, they did a great job emceeing it. So kudos to the police department. We love you guys.
Terrific.
All right. Well, we are almost exactly at an hour. Sorry, we were running a little late today, but we were here on our Wednesday as promised. Like us, follow us on YouTube. We've got 100, maybe 50 subscribers on YouTube. If you subscribe on YouTube, you can be notified when we go live on Wednesdays. If you can't catch us live, you can find us on basically every podcast platform. So wherever you listen to podcasts, look for the Saratoga Podcast.
Excellent. Thanks for watching, folks.
All right, kids. We'll see you next week.